Hi, I finished the series of Margaret Rutherford Miss Marple adaptations recently with Murder Ahoy. The previous two films had been adapted from Hercule Poirot novels. Only the first of the four was based on an actual Miss Marple book, and this film takes a small amount of inspiration from an unrelated Christie book. They do it with mirrors, but is generally an original script, and it shows. The story begins with Miss Marple becoming one of the trustees of a charity where troubled youth are taken on board a special ship seconded from the Royal Navy to learn naval things and put them back on the straight and narrow. However, during the meeting, a man who has said that he has investigated the charity and found something very alarming is suddenly killed. It turns out he's been poisoned by his own snuff. Miss Marple decides to investigate and heads on board ship, leading to various more murders and other unrelated plot strands. I found this by far the weakest of the four films, and it's surprisingly sloppy in how badly written it is. There are a number of plot threads that go nowhere. There's a story about some of the boys on board who are being trained as burglars, but that is the part that was borrowed from They Do It With Mirrors, and yet it has no real relevance to the rest of the story. It turns out that there's an embezzlement plot and that a greater number of students has been reported that are actually reporting for duty on board ship. Um, we have Miss Marple turfing the captain out of his quarters in order to take his bed on board ship and contacting her longtime companion, Mr. Stringer, by land. And there's all kinds of things going on, but I really found my attention wandering. Margaret Rutherford's performance at this point is becoming incredibly eccentric, with lots of face pulling and expressions, and it's faintly ridiculous that the poster makes such a big deal of her being an Oscar winner, as indeed she was, but as though that's somehow uh, sufficient enticement to get people into watching the movie. Lionel Jeffries as the captain of the ship, I thought was actually rather strong and maybe one of the best supporting players in the whole series, mixing between um, underplaying and overplaying his scenes. Uh, for once, he doesn't propose marriage to Miss Marple at the end of the story, but instead there is again, completely unrelated and barely hinted at romantic attachment elsewhere for him. And there's a number of notable names elsewhere in the story, with Francis Matthews appearing as well, and Derek Nimmo in a small role, even a cameo by Nicholas Parsons as a doctor who, in a running gag, all the other characters note how brusque he is. But the film is really very pedestrian. It has none of the spark of the brilliance of Christie, and certainly none of the entertainment value of the previous three films. It's certainly the weakest of the four. I'm yet to see The Alphabet Murders, an Hercule Poirot adaptation in which Rutherford has a cameo, but hopefully that'll be coming along the line. But in the meantime, it looks like I would recommend the first of the four rather. The next two are passable, but Murder Ahoy certainly is not.